Good morning, New Paltz. I'm your host, Livia. You know, it's finals week, so I just want to remind everyone to take care of themselves. Get some sleep. Hydrate. Take a break if you need it. Don't push yourself. All right, today we have Caitlin, Veronica, and Maddie coming to you from the Green Room in Parker Theater. How y'all doing today?
Good. How are you?
I'm great. All right, today's topic is gender roles and female agency. We've got 4 plays to talk about. Some show prominent female agency, some show a lack of it, and some fall right in between. Before we start, let's introduce ourselves. I'm Livia. I'm from Manhattan. We have Caitlin from Wading River.
Hey.
Veronica from Queens.
Hey.
And Maddie from Ronkonkoma.
Hi, everybody.
Okay, Maddie, do you want to tell everyone what female agency is?
Right, so the definition of agency is the ability for a person or an agent to act for herself or himself. So a person who is allowed to act for herself has agency. So a person who isn't allowed to act for him or herself is lacking agency. So when we typically think of women, we think that they don't have as much agency as we think, especially within these plays. But I think things are changing.
Okay, Caitlin, do you want to get us started?
Sure, I'd love to. Today I'm going to be talking about The Country Wife, which is a play written by William Wycherley. So in The Country Wife, this one main couple, the Pinchwives, they're newly married, and they're kind of having some trouble in the relationship with trust. And Jack Pinchwife, which is the husband, he's extremely jealous of his wife, Marjorie. And the men she attracts just by being in public really frustrates him. And that leads me to believe that Marjorie's role in this play represents the theme of a lack of agency. Because of his overbearing control issues, Marjorie is not allowed to explore the town of London on her own. Therefore, she is stripped of the power to make her own decisions. He also locks her in a closet when he sees male visitors are approaching their home. So that's, horrible. Just very controlling. And so kind of somewhat playing into gender roles, she doesn't like that she has to obey her husband, but she knows that that's what she's supposed to do, so she, doesn't fight that. So I would definitely say that that's a huge example of how she has a lack of agency, because she knows that she could make choices for herself if she wanted to, but she decides not to. And so eventually, she goes out on the town with her husband, Pinchwife, and her sister-in-law, and she meets Harry Horner, who whisks her away. But she allows him to do that, and only because she doesn't like the way her husband treats her. So it's kind of like, it's almost disguised as she's, making that decision for herself, but at the same time, it's like she's exploring this thing that she doesn't have with her husband, and she really fancies the fact that he fancies her. And so she attempts to make her own decision by spending time with him. And when she tries to write him a letter, Jack tries to intervene and stop her from writing her true feelings. However, she defies him by getting her true letter to Horner. And so that's a sense of her trying to fight back and try to gain her sense of agency. After writing this first letter, she decides that she's going to write a second letter to Horner, and when Jack Pinchwife finds out about this, he, draws a sword on her and, attempts to murder her. That's how jealous he is, he's stopped, and, everything works out fine, and in the end, she ends up marrying Horner, actually. They fall in love, they get married, so in the end, she technically, in some way, has regained this agency. But throughout the play, she struggles with being able to make her own decisions versus having to obey her husband.
Yes, Marjorie.
Love that for her.
Take back that agency.
Yes.
I personally, when I read this play, I really, really hated Jack Pinchwife.
Me too.
I was like, what are you doing? Locking your wife in a room, and then you draw a fucking sword on her?
Right.
What? So you know what? Good for Marjorie. I'm glad that she was able to take back her agency a little bit and, fuck you, Jack.
Yeah, right? She was able to gain that a little bit, even though she struggled with it throughout the whole play.
It's not not, like, in my opinion, that Horner is the best dude either, but, you know, it's an upgrade from being locked in a room.
I mean, Horner's not the best choice either, but, like, way better than Jack.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she's not being locked in a room.
Right.
Also,
anymore.
I think he's better for her. Just
Yeah.
saying. He's not the better person. He's just
Better for Marjorie.
a change in, I don't know, a change in
Personality. Yeah. Two polar
for a
opposites.
relationship. Yeah.
Good job, Marjorie.
Great, thanks, Caitlin. Now we're gonna move to Veronica. What do you have for us?
So today we've got Lysistrata by Aristophanes. Got it. Written in 411 BC. So Lysistrata is full of badass women. These women gain their agency in quite an interesting way. Let's take a look. Lysistrata is the story of a woman named Lysistrata who desires that all the men come home from the Peloponnesian War and stop their fighting. Lysistrata is only a middle-class woman herself, but she has a plan in order to get all of the power over the men. Lysistrata gets together all the women of Sparta, Thebes, and a couple other Greek towns to create a conspiracy against the men, demanding that none of them have sex with their husbands until they agree to end the war. They even go so far as to create a pact of sacrificial wine, and they all dress up in their most revealing clothes and best makeup to tempt all the men into wanting to sleep with them again. All of the comedy ensues, and eventually, every man on stage has a full-blown erection. At the end of the play, all of the men are coming together to listen to Lysistrata's plea for an agreement, and Lysistrata has with her a goddess that is taking the form of a very hot, very naked woman. While Lysistrata is championing for peace, I think all of the men are championing for sex. So the women of Lysistrata are able to play one hell of an Uno reverse card on all the men in this play, gaining them their agency. As soon as the women have created this pact, all of the men coming back from the war are rendered absolutely useless and helpless. The women stand strong in their pact against the men, and by withholding sex, they get their one over on most of the men in Greece. Standing together, the women of Greece are able to gain the agency to get what they want to happen.
Amazing. I feel like Lysistrata is one of the more interesting plays we read this semester, to be honest.
Absolutely.
And I feel like it made most sense as a.
Yeah.
I don't know how
yeah.
much of the other plays we read were meant to be comedies, but they were harder to understand as such.
Yeah, and I feel like if people know Lysistrata, the first thing they think of when they think of Lysistrata is the strong woman in the play. They definitely have their agency. They have it under control. I don't think there's one point in the play where Lysistrata doubts that she can't do it.
Yes, and
Yeah.
I don't think there's really. I mean, besides the one scene where the women are like, "Oh, like I have to. I forgot to take care of something at my home. I have to go
Right,
back."
the women start to falter, and Lysistrata keeps them grounded.
Yeah, and after that one stint, I think, other than that, they've never really lost
Yeah.
their ground.
They're very successful.
So I have a quick question for you all. They have their agency, but since it is based on the exchange of sex, at what cost is this agency if women are still only being seen as sexual objects? How do you think the women in this play would feel about that?
I think that the women in this play are smart, and they know that the men in this play just want sex. So they're just using that to their advantage. I don't think that it's taking away from their agency. I think that they're just using this information in a smart way.
Yes, I would agree.
Yeah, me too.
All right, thanks, Veronica. So now it's my turn. I'm going to be talking about The Rover by Aphra Behn, which focuses on two sisters, Helena and Florinda, who both are having the struggle of whether to follow their hearts and go with what they want, or to follow their brother and their father's orders. So in the case of Florinda, at the beginning of this play, she has an arranged marriage planned to her brother's best friend. And at the beginning, you can see her struggling with whether to follow her brother's orders and marry his friend, or to go and marry her true love, Belleville. She even, in the beginning of the play, in talking with her brother about the arranged marriage, compares it to slavery. And this example shows the difference in the gender, and that even though she is a woman, she knows that she has to follow her brother's orders in order to get his permission for that marriage. Even though Florinda's brother doesn't give her the opportunity to be with her true love, she finds a way at the end of the play to marry Belleville before her expected husband arrives to marry him. The other sister, Helena, is promised to the convent, so she's supposed to become a nun. And this play is set during Carnival, which is a big festival celebration, and everybody dresses up. So she's able to participate in the festival and dress up as all of these different characters, and falls in love with this man named Wilmore. And she shows her female agency towards the end of the play when Wilmore has relations with a prostitute named Angelica, and Helena has kind of caught him in his own lies and basically confronts him and tells him that she won't see him anymore unless he breaks it off with Angelica, and she gets him to agree to marriage. So she shows her female agency, and so does Florinda, in the fact that they both defy their brother's orders when during the Restoration period that wasn't the case and you had to follow the men's orders.
Yeah, I definitely feel like in the beginning of the play, both the sisters kind of have a lack of agency, but they quickly realize that they don't want that to be their lives. And, when they go to Carnival, they take it back, for sure. I think the atmosphere of Carnival and having the masks and the costumes, it helps them to be more confident in themselves and, take that agency.
Yeah, also important to note that I wouldn't be able to pronounce her name for the life of me, but The Rover was actually written by a female playwright, and it's one of the first big well-known plays that was so. Olivia, do you think I could get your help pronouncing a name?
Aphra-Behn.
Aphra-Behn. We stan an icon.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that Aphra-Behn was one of the first English women to earn a living from her writing, and because it took place in the Restoration era, she knew the struggles that women went through, but she was still able to write a play that included both the lack of female agency that women in general had during that time period, but also had the modern-ish kind of ideals that women could take their agency back. And that's all I have. Last but not least, we have Maddie.
Woo! Woo-hoo. All right, so I'm going to talk to you about The London Merchant by George Lillo. So in The London Merchant, we have the character Sarah Millwood, who's a prostitute, and she basically decides at the beginning of the play that she wants to seduce and exploit an innocent man for money. So initially she decided she wanted to do this to get revenge on men, and she quickly decides her target for this is going to be George Barnwell, who works for a wealthy merchant. So Millwood, throughout the play, is very manipulative and persuades Barnwell to commit all types of felonies. First, Millwood convinces Barnwell to steal money from his boss. Millwood convinces Barnwell by telling him that she loves him and that she needs the money because she's going to be evicted, which is not true. Barnwell complies, and then he quits his job because he feels so guilty about it. Millwood then proposes to keep the money-stealing scheme up, that Barnwell steal money from his wealthy uncle. But if Barnwell were to steal the money from his uncle, he would definitely recognize him. So the only logical conclusion they come to is that they're going to have to kill his uncle as well. So Barnwell complies. He steals the money from his uncle and kills him. In the end, Sarah Millwood's servants are aware of these plans, and they basically turn Millwood and Barnwell in, and they're both arrested, and they're going to be sentenced to death. I feel like unlike many of the plays we read, Sarah Millwood has her agency throughout the whole entire play. She's in control of Barnwell and his actions, and she's very manipulative to get what she wants. And even in the end, when she's arrested and to be sentenced to death, she admits that she doesn't regret one thing she did. She wins with her actions and decisions and is strong until the end. And because this time period, like, women have a lack of agency normally, George Barnwell did not even suspect that Sarah was doing all this to exploit him for money. Like, he had no clue until the end. So I think that says a lot about the time period and how people expect women to not have agency, but she definitely has it the whole time.
Granted, this is not the best example of female agency. Certainly.
Right. I mean, Sarah does some pretty messed up things.
Very manipulative.
Very, very manipulative. I'm curious to see if people would think she's the protagonist or the antagonist, because I mean the things she does are not protagonist-y type of things.
Well, absolutely not.
But I don't know. I feel like it could go either way.
I feel like it's not a bad portrayal of agency. I just think it's different. It's agency in a different light.
It's a bad portrayal of morals, not necessarily agency. And then it just goes to show that men and women are equal. They can be equally as evil. That's an important thing.
I mean, she says that she's doing all this to get revenge on men. She is a prostitute, so it just makes me think that she's been done wrong in the past.
You know what?
And she's just taking back her agency, and she's not standing for it anymore. And she does get her revenge. And you know what? Good for
And
Sarah.
I think it's interesting to compare her use of female agency to that of Lysistrata and those women.
Right.
Just the difference. I mean, they all are manipulators, but it's interesting to compare the different ways that they do it.
They're both manipulating in very different ways.
And their ultimate goal.
Yeah, very different end goals.
The reason for manipulating. Going off of what you said before about how women in that time, you wouldn't expect them to have as much agency. Just like a little off topic about like the gender roles, it's just very interesting to see how opposite they are, and that what's his name, George,
yeah.
George is so willing to obey and listen to anything that Sarah has to say.
He completely believes her.
Yes, in everything. Whereas in other plays of that time, it would be flipped gender. Gender.
Exactly.
All right, thanks, Maddie. So as you can see, these plays show a wide range of females either lacking in agency and trying to gain it back, and females who have a strong sense of agency throughout the entire play. And I think what we've come to an agreement that they all go about gaining their agency in different ways, and they also have very different goals in the end. And speaking about female agency today?
Well, I think definitely today, compared to back then, females are very strong. Like, we're very much more independent than we were back then. I feel like I would like to say most of the time, females today have their agency. And I think that other people females and males value that females should have agency.
I would like
for the most part.
Yes. I'd like to point out that yes, in the Western world, a lot of females do, for the most part, we have our agency. Unfortunately, that's not the case for the rest of the world. There are a lot of places in the world where the reality for female agency is still very much like what is in some of these plays that showcase females with less agency. So just something to think about.
There's like so many different cultures out there. Luckily, in the culture we live in, female agency is like something that most females get to have. But in lots of other cultures, there's always going to be the lack of agency because that's just the way the culture is.
Yeah, but it's just amazing how far we've come from like
definitely
years, decades, centuries ago, and here we are today. And women can have jobs or be single moms or be working moms and
Yep. We've definitely come a long way. We still have farther to go, I think we would all agree. But yeah.
Well, thanks everybody for joining me and talking about gender roles and female agency.
Thank you.
Thank you, Liv.
And thank you, Bill Blake, for a great semester.
Thanks for everything.